Hello everybody, welcome back to a brand new video, and I think it was a couple weeks ago. I did a Senate prediction, and now I'm going to be doing a governor's prediction for the month of January 2022. Yesterday was New Year's Day, or as I'm recording it, today's New Year's Day, but you're getting it the day after. It's the second. You're getting it on the second, but I'm recording it on the first. That makes sense. But, so we're going to be doing our governor predictions for this month for, as of currently right now. And we're going to do like we did for the Senate video, we're going to do in like alphabetical order because that's the way I've got it in. And so starting off with Alabama, we don't have any polling right now. However, we do have what could be a contested Republican primary between Kay Ivey and Linda Blanchard. However, I don't think Linda Blanchard's going to win right now. It doesn't seem like Donald Trump's going to endorse her or as of right now at least anyway. And plus, he hasn't said anything about Kay Ivey. Then again, he hasn't really said anything about Brad Little, and he endorsed a primary challenge to him. So we'll just have to wait and see. As of right now, I'm going to say it's safe red no matter what. Safe Republican, however, whether it's Kay Ivey or Linda Blanchard, we're just going to have to wait and find out. Next up is Alaska. Right now, the only polling we have shows a 51 to 50 victory for Bill Walker, which is strange. Why don't you say 50-50? Even if Bill Walker has more votes. But either way, Bill Walker did get, more support in that poll than Mike Dunleavy, and we know how polling is in Alaska. However, I'm going to have it as lean Republican right now because Mike Dunleavy really ain't that popular in Alaska. There was a recall effort against him, which failed, which, there's never been a recall effort, like, to that extent in Alaska to where, hey, we could have a serious problem here, you know in a while. So Mike Dunleavy really not that popular. The Gavin Newsom of Alaska. Next up is Arizona. I had Mark Kelly as the victor here, and I think Mark Kelly is going to carry Katie Hobbs over the finish line, just very narrowly. I think Kari Lake is a great choice for the Republicans. She's the best choice as of right now. We have two polls, both of which show Katie Hobbs leading Kari Lake. Um, and things could change, absolutely, but as of right now, I'm going to put this as a tilt Democrat and a flip for the Democrat Party. Next up is Arkansas. We only have generic polling for Arkansas, but it shows that Republicans are in a pretty strong place here, winning. I have them winning by around 30 points right now. So Sarah Huckabee Sanders probably going to get the Republican nomination. She really faces no serious challenge. She'll probably be facing off against Daniel Whitman, if I had to guess. Whitfield, my bad. And she'll probably win by around 30 points or more. Next up, California. I do think this is going to end up being a safe Democrat seat no matter what. I mean, it's going to, even if it was a Republican versus a Democrat. But I think this is going to be a Democrat versus a Democrat. I think Newsom is going to be facing off against a businessman by the name of Kevin Paffrath. And I do think Paffrath is going to make Newsom sweat, as there are a lot of Democrats who don't like Newsom, but will vote for him because they hate the Republican Party. And if they had another choice, another Democrat to vote for, then yeah, they will probably vote for said Democrat over Newsom. But I think Newsom is still going to win. He'll probably beat Paffrath by around 9 points in a general election between the two, so he'll still win. Next up, Colorado. Jared Polis, one of the most popular governors in the country. He'll probably win by 20 points, easy. He'll outperform Michael Bennet with no problems. Next up is Connecticut. You guys know me. I used to be the whole, hey, the Connecticut governor race is going to flip. However, Ned Lamont's actually really popular. He's got like a 64% approval rating, 65, 66, somewhere around there, in the mid-60s. He's actually really popular. So, unless something were to happen, like some polling comes out and says otherwise, Ned Lamont's probably going to win. We do have some polling that has Lamont up by 12, so I'm thinking he's probably going to win by around 10 to 11 points against Bob Stefanowski, who I think is going to run, by the way. Next up, Ron DeSantis in Florida. He's going to win by a safe margin. I think he's going to win by around 13 points or more. He'll outperform Marco Rubio. And, I'll just be like, hey, gotcha, guys. I'll just stroke my ego while I say I was right. Next up is Georgia. Brian Kemp is currently in a primary against Vernon Jones and David Perdue, with David Perdue gaining Donald Trump's endorsement. And I do think David Perdue is going to end up winning the Republican primary, and he'll be running up against Stacey Abrams. David Perdue, definitely more moderate than Brian Kemp is. I do think he's probably going to win by around 2 to 3 points. I think he'll avoid a runoff, unlike the Senate election, which will go to a runoff, which Warnock will win. Next up, Hawaii. I do think Tulsi Gabbard will end up running for governor. As of right now, if she doesn't, it'll probably be Josh Green who gets the nomination. and they'll be facing off against BJ Penn, who is an MMA fighter now running for office. BJ Penn, definitely the best Republican to run for governor right now, besides Charles DeJoe. Um, because of the name recognition, you really don't have a Republican down there with that big a name recognition besides BJ Penn and Charles DeJoe, as well as Linda Lingle, I think her name is. But Linda Lingle ain't gonna run for office again. But BJ Penn, definitely the best choice right now for the Republicans. He'll probably make it closer than it should be, like how Jack Ciattarelli did in New Jersey. Next up, Idaho. Janice McGetchen's probably going to oust the Republican governor in the primary, and then probably beat whoever, probably Laura McClain, in the general by around 35 to 40 points. Next up, Illinois. This is a governor race that could end up being close. However, I don't see it getting under 10 as of right now. The Republicans don't have a good challenger right now. Unless Rodney Davis or Adam Kinzinger decides to throw their hat in the ring, this race will probably be decided by 11 points or more. Next up, the state of Kansas. I actually think it's going to be a likely margin. I don't think this will be safe like a lot of people are saying. Laura Kelly is actually not unpopular. She ain't popular either. She's just there. And there will be a lot of independents still going to vote for her because she's actually done quite a bit for the state when it comes to being a Democrat in a mostly Republican country, in a mostly Republican state, which is good, like Andy Beshear. But she is still going to lose. She'll probably, Derek Schmidt will probably beat her by 7 points or more in Kansas. Next up, the state of Maine. We have a match between Janet Mills and Paula Page. There was someone who said that this was going to be a likely seat, which is what I used to have it as, because Paula Page did so poorly in 2018. Paula Page didn't run for governor in 2018. I don't know what information he's got. I'm not going to say who it was, but yeah, I think this race is going to be a lean Democrat. I think Janet Mills will probably win by around 3 points as of right now over Paula Page. Paula Page could make this race a lot closer. We could see this as Tilt R, Tilt D, whatever. We'll just have to wait and see what happens. Next up, Maryland. We only have generic polling right now, and there was one poll which was a Hogan-like Republican versus a moderate Democrat, which is, this cat's getting on my nerves, which is what I use because I do think we're going to be getting a Hogan-like Republican versus a moderate Democrat, and it actually had the Hogan-like Republican leading over the moderate Democrat, and, generic polling, you really can't trust it, but I do think this will end up being Michael Steele versus Tom Perez, and it kind of reminds me of the situation over in Virginia, where we had a moderate populist Republican versus a establishment Democrat. And, Glenn Youngkin ended up winning that election. So I think we're going to see a repeat in Maryland where Michael Steele pulls a giant upset over Tom Perez and just shocks the world, keeping Maryland red, at least for another 4 years. Because unless Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or whoever wins in 2024, Michael Steele's probably going to lose in 2026 to a Democrat, which, is fine. Things happen. Next up, Massachusetts. This race used to be safe red, but now Charlie Baker's retiring. It's safe blue. Republicans can't find nobody. Like, Jeff Deal will probably do better than people are expecting. He's not a Trump Republican. He's not a far-right politician. He's a liberal Republican. He's a Rockefeller Republican. He's a populist in name only, is what I'm going to say. He's campaigning like a populist when he's not. From what I've seen. Like, in 2018, he, in a blue wave year, he was running for Senate against Elizabeth Warren. He won a county against Elizabeth Warren, for God's sake, in a blue wave year, when Republicans don't typically win counties in Massachusetts in a general election. So, you've got to take that in mind. Jeff Deal's pretty strong contender for Republicans, but he's not going to win. He'll probably lose by 20 points or more, so I'm being generous with that 20 points, by the way. Next up is Michigan. James Craig's pulling very well in Michigan right now. However, I don't see him, getting over 5% as of right now. I think he'll probably end up winning by around 2 to 3 points right now. He's doing very well. I think it's going to be a lean Republican, a flip for the Republicans, by the way. Which is something Republicans want because Gretchen Whitmer is hated by independents and Republicans alike, which is probably going to be her downfall because of the independents not liking her. Because I don't give a damn if you're a Democrat who's unpopular with Republicans, or a Democrat who's unpopular or a Republican unpopular with Democrats. That don't matter. How popular are you with independents? If the independents like you, you're good. If they don't, you're fucked. That's how it works. Next up, Minnesota. I do think that this is going to be a likely state. I think I used to have it as lean, but now I'm putting it back up to likely because Minneapolis and St. Paul, huge Democrat urban areas that are legitimately impossible to overtake. It's essentially like Georgia and Virginia. Republicans really can't, win over. I just look. I know the hypocrisy there. Like, bear with me. And like, we could flip. Republicans could. Mike Lindell used to be the guy, and then he started turning into a far right nut job, and now he'd probably lose by 20 points or more to Tim Walz. We don't want that. And none of the candidates who are currently running are good candidates. They don't have the name recognition. So yeah, so Tim Walz probably wins by 8 points or more at this point. Next up, Nebraska. Donald Trump endorsed a farmer by the name of Charles Herbster, and I do think he'll end up winning the nomination. There's no polling stating otherwise or supporting that statement, but I think it's safe to say Charles Herbster will win the Republican nomination along with the governorship. Next up is Nevada. I used to have this seat as a tilt Democrat, but now I'm putting it as tilt Republican. Um, Joe Lombardo is polling very well against Steve Sisolak right now. Joe Lombardo is polling very well in the Republican primary, and I do think he will end up winning the Republican primary. He's the Clark County Sheriff. It wouldn't surprise me if Reno stayed blue and Clark County went red, because Reno's trending blue, Clark County's trending red, and it wouldn't surprise me if we saw that in this election with, Reno going red and Clark County going blue for the Senate election. Wouldn't surprise me at all. But I do think Joe Lombardo will end up flipping Nevada's Senate seat, barely. Next up, New Hampshire. This is going to be a safe seat. Chris Sununu, super popular. There's not a Democrat currently announced running, or big name Republican anyway. And it seems like Sununu may either go without a challenger, or he is going to get fed a sacrificial lamb. He's going to end up winning by 40 points or more. Next up is New York. We only have generic polling right now, and right now Democrats are favored. Republicans only had 26% of the poll in that one, so it doesn't seem like Republicans have a chance, even if Kathy Hochul's god-awful. So the New York City, the only way I can see it is if Lee Zeldin gets the nomination and he, fucking campaigns his heart out here in New York City, in, the, lower New York, the New York City area, like Staten Island, New York's tail, let's call it that. Because Kathy Hochul is hated by the people here. She is hated because she is an upstate Democrat. Fun fact. So you would think she'd be moderate, but she's not. Well, more moderate than the squad, I guess. Next up is New Mexico. We only have generic polling, and it showed that Michelle Lujan Grisham is in tough waters right now, and Mark Ronchetti, we all know, outperformed Donald Trump in New Mexico by 4 points, if I'm not mistaken. 4 to 5 points, somewhere around that ballpark, which is pretty good. So, if he were to run against Michelle Lujan Grisham, who isn't really that popular with independents in New Mexico, he'll probably end up winning by around 2 points, which will be shocking for a lot of people, but I'm calling it right now. I do think Mark Ronchetti will be flipping New Mexico. Next up is going to be Ohio, Mike DeWine. I do think him and John Cranley will be in for the fight over their life, despite Mike DeWine's popularity being so high. Mike DeWine is pretty popular in the state of Ohio. However, John Cranley is also popular in the state of Ohio. So if you have two popular politicians in a red state, you're probably going to get the red guy. We could probably get the Republican winning, but I do think DeWine probably wins by 4 points. This will probably go to likely here in a few months, but as of right now, I do think DeWine will end up winning narrowly. Next up, Oklahoma. I do think Kevin Stitt, if he isn't issued a primary challenge by Donald Trump, because who knows? Kevin Stitt seems to be being attacked by far-right politicians left, right, and center. Who knows? Kevin Stitt will probably underperform Donald Trump. Kevin Stitt's really not that popular in the state of Oklahoma. He'll probably win by around 28 points or more. Next up, Oregon. I do think this will be likely Democrat. I do think Ted Wheeler will end up running for the governorship, win the Democrat primary, face off against Kerry McQuiston. For the general, I do think Wheeler will probably win by around 9 points or more. So it'll be close to safe, borderline safe, but it's going to be likely. He'll probably win by 9.2 points. Probably the Portland area will come out in droves to vote for this guy. Walk over hot coals to vote for him. Next up, Pennsylvania. I do think that right now, even though I didn't have it in the last video, I am changing my Pennsylvania Senate to lean Republican to toss-up, and I do think John Fetterman is more favored because there was a poll that had him leading over Mehmet Oz, probably because he lives in New Jersey, not Pennsylvania, apparently. However, I can't trust shit now because I said Eric Adams lived in New Jersey, but he didn't. He lived in Brooklyn. My apologies. I was misinformed. I'm sorry. I really am. But I do think that Lou Barletta is going to be beating Josh Shapiro by around 3 points. Because governors in Pennsylvania are typically elected by these huge numbers, and we're not really seeing that. There's really no polling in Pennsylvania right now, so I'm just going off a hunch right now. In Rhode Island, we have Dan McKee probably going to win his crowded primary, probably very narrowly because we have Matt Brown running. He's very popular with Democrats in the state, as well as Nellie Gorbea, if I'm getting her name right. But I do think Dan McKee will probably end up winning. He'll probably end up winning by around 15 points because he's actually pretty popular. He's a progressive in a progressive state, and he's probably going to win, even if Alan Fung decides to run again. Alan Fung would have been favored against anyone else besides Matt Brown and Dan McKee. Alan Fung would have been favored against anyone else, in my opinion, besides those two. Next up, I forgot Iowa. That's going to be safe Republican. Chuck Grassley is going to carry Kim Reynolds over the 10% line, which is my threshold for safe. So there you go. Next up, South Carolina. I do think McMaster's probably going to end up winning. I think Tim Scott's probably going to carry him to a pretty good performance. He'll probably win by around 14 points, while Scott wins by around 17 to 18. Next up, we have South Dakota. I do think Kristi Noem will be primaried by Stephen Haggard because she is scandal-plagued, unpopular by a lot of Republicans. I do think she'll lose, and I do think Stephen Haggard will end up winning by around 30 points, actually, in South Dakota against whoever runs. Next up, Tennessee. Bill Lee's a pretty popular governor. He'll probably end up winning by around 30 points. Pretty popular guy. Next up, Texas, Greg Abbott. People hate me. Leftists hate me for doing this. It's a safe state. Beto's not that great of a candidate anymore. He's not. He's kind of, washed out all of his potential with the presidential run. People are tired of him. And right now, Greg Abbott is polling at 7%. It might as well be safe. Because Donald Trump was underestimated in Texas by 5 points. If we do that now, Abbott wins by 12. I'm pretty sure Abbott's winning by 14 or more in this state. So, sorry, Beto, but you're not winning. At least not right now. Next up, Vermont. Phil Scott, he probably wins by around the same margin Chris Sununu does. A safe margin. Probably 35 points or more. Wyoming is also safe. Mark Gordon, pretty popular, probably wins by around 40 points or more. Any Republican would win by 40 points or more at this point. And now we leave off at Wisconsin. I do think Sean Duffy will end up running for the governorship. He's already got Donald Trump's endorsement, essentially. And he'll probably end up facing off. He will be facing off against Tony Evers. And I do think he'll probably flip this seat. The Rust Belt flips it yet again. And I do think Duffy will probably outperform both Craig and Barletta. He'll probably win by 4 points, while Craig wins by 3, and Barletta wins by 2. 4, 3, 2. Hey, look at that. And so this is my current governor prediction. We have 32 Republican governors, 18 Democrat governors. Oh boy, Democrats really didn't think this one through, did they? But anyway, this is the Chaotic One saying peace. Don't forget to follow my Twitter at Chaotic Politics.